Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today's seminar is hosted by Berkeley Pharma Tech Foundation. My name is Van Luan Nguyen, and I'm the president of the foundation. Our mission is to increase access for scientists and entrepreneurs in the biotech industry through education, mentorship, and professional opportunities. To get involved, follow us on LinkedIn for updates. Stay tuned for our upcoming seminars and conferences, and feel free to reach out to me to explore more ways to engage with our mission. Today, we're thrilled to welcome our speaker, Dr. Arnold Lee, a physician, healthcare AI expert, investor, product strategist, as he shares the importance of collaboration in transforming healthcare through innovative technologies, partnerships, and solutions. Dr. Arnold Lee is a physician by training, but a technologist at heart. With over 18 years of experience spanning clinical practice, product development, and startup operations, including 6 years as an investor, he is a dedicated healthcare AI strategist and venture capitalist. Passionate about leveraging technology to transform healthcare, he excels at building and partnering with organizations to drive meaningful impact. As a clinical product lead at Komodo Health, he played a pivotal role in advancing internal platforms, directly contributing to over $1 million in annual revenue through customer acquisition and retention. At Lumiata, he spearheaded the development of AI-driven solutions, including the flagship disease graph and quality metrics tools for ACOs and SMBs. His expertise also extends to electronic health record development, having contributed to Circle's internal EHR design from the ground up. A product geek at heart, he believes that the simplest solutions often hold the most transformative potential in healthcare. His guiding philosophy is that when applied appropriately and ethically, technology can accelerate and improve healthcare delivery, especially in a system where clinicians are at a breaking point. Beyond healthcare innovation, he has also excelled in high-performance environments, having been part of a winning America's Cup team. With a strong entrepreneurial drive and an extensive network, he continues to push the boundaries of what's possible in digital health and AI-driven care. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Arnold Lee.
Thank you very much, Yana. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to attend. I'm going to kind of keep it informal. I'm sorry, I'm in a workspace, and TG&E is kind of knocked out stuff on my street. So I have to work outside my home. So thank you very much. I just wanted to ask anybody here. This is kind of an informal session. I wanted to keep it conversational to understand about how I can help the team, how I can help people here, and collaborate. I think some of us are technology founders, some of us are maybe clinicians. I'm not sure if anybody's LinkedIn, so I do apologize. It's been a little bit of a hectic couple of weeks, but I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear how we could collaborate and work together, especially in this space. I mean, Banlone, very well. Thank you for summarizing the history and the background pretty well. Trained in internal medicine, decided to move from New York to come to California for more technologically focused opportunities because that's kind of where it was at that time. And was at One Medical for 8 years, where I was able to work with building the EHR from ground up. So that was always a lot of fun because that was a lot of product input, UI, UX experience, and did some business initiatives there too as well at the same time. After that, that's kind of where I went into the machine learning space in 2015 with a company called Lumiata, which has been since acquired by Somatis, and where what we used to call machine learning in the old days, now we call AI. So was able to build a graph, a medical graph, so to speak, which actually connected disease concepts together, where I focus on rare disease and oncology. My other colleagues focus on different things. And I was there for 2 years learning how to write code and, really immerse myself in the world of healthcare analytics, and did a bunch of things, worked also as a feature engineer, building data sets for the training of the models, and also did a lot of QA and feedback. So that's kind of the experiences. I write Python code. It's terrible code, just to let everybody know here to qualify that. Um, and then I moved into the venture space, where I've been focused on digital health for the last 6 years, or what we call digital health and what we call health tech. My role is to evaluate clinical workflow solutions, application of AI, and the actual product itself. So I've been have about 11 investments under the belt. Some are doing well and some are doing okay. So, like in the venture space, anything can go really, really well or really badly. So, you take what comes. In addition to that, I joined Komodo Health in 2021, where I was clinical product lead, and what we're doing is it was essentially a health data vendor that allowed us to give insights to life science and pharma companies. I did a lot of work with the Prism and Pulse platforms. Really enjoyed the work because I was able to give clinical perspectives to stakeholders internally, externally. Also help with giving feedback on the UI about some of the platforms that I really, really like. So you could see the power of claims codes doing certain things, but you could also see the limitations of using certain types of data sets to actually, build out insights. But overall, a very good experience. And after 2022, I've been focused solely on the venture space. I'm consulting with some smaller startups where I've kind of like also learned prompt engineering, taught myself that. And did a very good project and continue to work with a company called UE Medi. And I'm also working with another health data vendor that's now focused more in the med tech space specifically instead of life science and pharma. So taking a lot of my experiences from all the years I've done all this into different areas of the healthcare industry, so or at least the healthcare sector. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And again, like I said, I'm here to keep this conversational. I just want to answer questions. Again, happy to help anybody or ask if anybody kind of like it's kind of an AMA of sorts. So go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you have questions.
Ethan, you look like you want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Sorry to put
Hi.
you on the spot.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do have my camera on, and thanks
Yeah.
so much again today for like hopping on the call. I'm actually a grad student at the University of Pennsylvania, just calling out
Mhm.
of one of the buildings right now, and I'm doing my first health hackathon this weekend. So me and a few
Nice.
friends, we're just kind of looking for inspiration here. But I think kind of a first question off the top of my head that I was wondering was like really getting getting stakeholders to buy into like a new like certain idea. And I know like hospitals, healthcare are like, famously or infamously
Yeah.
they go really slow with innovation.
Mhm.
Like what are some areas that, especially as like a relatively young team made up of like grad students, PhDs,
Mhm.
what can we do to really ensure that whenever we build a certain digital health technology, that it has things from like efficacy, equity, and accessibility in mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
to really, help drive forward whatever value proposition we're making happen.
So that's a great question because I mean that always comes up all the time, and one of the things I've oftentimes recommended the teams to focus on is what are you doing, what are you trying to impact exactly, and that's why I have um, a kind of like say love and a passion for more of the logistical solutions in the background that solve all the procurement and supply chain problems versus the actual patient-facing stuff. Not to say the patient-facing stuff cannot work or won't work. It's a little more difficult, right? And then you also have to engage the right people in the what do you call this in the healthcare system. I'm going to actually give a plug for a company that does healthcare procurement. I'm not going to mention names. Feel free to reach out to me after this if you want to know more about that company. But what they're doing is they're actually helping hospitals and healthcare systems with the procurement for medical equipment. Eventually, they're going to actually do medications at the same time. Procurement's a very, very difficult process. I think it can take up to like a year to get new CT machines, new MRI machines. And what this company has done is use a generative AI. It's a wrapper around. I can't remember which GPT, which one they're using, but the idea is to accelerate the access to what's available on the market, ask the right questions, and more importantly, is ask the right stakeholders within the company to get quotes and so on and so forth. So simple, I won't say it's simple. Things like that could be very helpful, understanding what is really plaguing the hospital system. You literally may have to go in to find out, and being at UPenn, you have the advantage of talking to the healthcare system there. A buddy of mine was at Thomas Jefferson. You've got a lot of great institutions. You might even want to solve something as not say simple, something as really important to who are the people on the ground. I'm talking even about the cleaning staff, the nurses, the phlebotomists, and stuff like that. What can accelerate the way they do things, right? How you build a solution or software that can actually help them kind of improve maybe even the logistical deployment of cleaning systems, right? A good example is like stuff happens in hospitals, stuff gets on the floor. We all know this. So can you deploy people faster, or can you develop something that's a better way of cleaning something up, a smaller version of those big machines they have in hospitals. So that's a kind of a tech solution too, because there's a hardware and a device. So how do you think make more? How do you make things more efficient that appeal to the people that are actually writing those checks? Again, that's my experience. Things may change in the next couple of years, but doing the actual ground research and asking people about what they really need. And this is not just asking the doctors alone. It's asking if you have access to the CFOs or the people that are the head of the procurement services. Again, plugging that procurement company because I kind of like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of how I'm looking at things. There's also another interesting thing that a friend of mine and I are constantly joking about. It's called it's the inbox, right? Think about essentially how much email that we get as clinicians nowadays compared to what it used to be. It may be a simple solution determining where the right email goes, because if you miss an email, it could be problematic, meaning that could lead to legal issues. All I'm trying to say is that having a system or an AI-driven system that can help properly triage things appropriately might be extremely helpful. And the reason I bring this up is my friend's always been complaining about it for the last 6 months. Like, all right, dude, go pay somebody to go build it. I don't know if you're going to do it or not, but it's that the stuff that actually takes those things off our plate that may make a huge difference. I know it's not fancy, but these are things that, you know, I can suggest to the team people here, the team members here, if you want to go offline, but I'm giving everybody a high level view. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was really good. And if I could have one more follow up to that,
Sure, please.
for things with, I've heard of that, like the email triaging idea and like other
Mhm.
things with like a bridge that's doing like clinician note taking.
Yeah.
I think with like the ROI of these sort of things, they're not like as super fleshed out.
Yeah.
And it's hard to like go to a hospital system and say like we've saved maybe like yes 20% extra time on the doctor's end. But how like as you as a VC and a physician like translate that narrative of hey, I'm a physician, I'm happier, this is why we should buy it. Like what's the ROI that really needs to be illustrated?
Well, actually, it's a great question, and this is something I've been chatting about with friends, and the view is not always shared in terms of how I look at these things and how some of my less clinically inclined colleagues would talk about. I would rather see a long-term study because I need to know what's coming out, maybe a 6-month, post-market kind of thing where you deploy this thing and you really want to see if things are actually going the way you have to obviously have key metrics, right? I'm not saying that the tools like a Bridge or Ambience are not doing anything. I think they're doing great work, but we don't really know the ROI because everybody here, I'm sure, has played with an LLM of sorts, right? There is generative content coming out. The things I'm concerned about are the summarization areas where you take somebody's notes. For example, if there is an 85-year-old patient that has multiple medical problems, how can you really be sure that that information is accurate? So I think there's going to be a constant need for ensuring and human feedback of sorts, maybe even agentic. I don't know, but the idea is to actually make sure that whatever is coming out is going to be actually accurate. So you got to develop internal metrics. But I really think that if there's a long-term trial, or at least some kind of clinical trial that everybody could potentially agree on, that might be extremely helpful. But I don't know if that's going to happen, right? Because the one thing that I think that everybody here knows is that clinician notes vary from person to person. I could be in my transcription or the whatever I say could be very different from what my orthopedic colleague says and so on and so forth, resulting in some potential output issues. So right now, I've not seen anything. I'm constantly on LinkedIn trying to figure out if there's going to be something happening is a bridge going to conduct a trial to prove that this is really done, improve things in terms of like burnout and so on and so forth. A lot is being talked about, but I don't really see anything coming out of there. I would want to see it's not about burnout rates are kind of hard to document, right? In the sense that not everybody wants to share how they're truly feeling for the very fact. I think the only way you're actually going to, at least in my opinion, you're actually going to see this is to find some form of like structured physician feedback. If you do surveys maybe every quarterly, are you feeling satisfied? And I'm not talking about random feedback. I'm talking an actual structure where you have actual numerical output that clinicians could check off. Again, that's not even going to be accurate. So I'm not trying to avoid your question. I'm trying to say that there are no standard KPIs to actually prove that a lot of these things are actually going to be worth the squeeze. Again, I want this to happen because it's going to help a lot, terms of documentation, but I don't think we've really truly found a way to show that this is really going to be is proving to be truly 100% helpful. No knock against the companies. I think they're doing a great thing. There are a lot of people trying to solve the problem, but it's kind of like we haven't really fully decided what is going to show that this is really proving that it's impacting healthcare in a very positive way. So, anyone else?
Hi, Arnold. I have
Yeah,
a question.
sure.
So the
Go
other
ahead.
day you mentioned that investors often have a contrarian attitude
Yeah.
to the rest of everyone else. So I was wondering, how does that contrarian attitude play into their investment decision and their investment focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of investors tend to think that there's disruption to be had in the fields that you're part of, right? I mean, it's like, we do it this way, we do it this way, we've done this for 20, 30, 40 years. The contrarian view from the investor perspective is there's new things that can come along and disrupt that. At least that's what I've seen so far in terms of like how people think like this technology can actually be better than clinicians and engineers combined. A good example is like we've seen recently in the things that have been said by the former CEO of Microsoft, right? Doctors will be replaced in 10 years and stuff like that. Not to say that doctors will be completely replaced. I'm not defending my profession. All I'm saying is that there are some things that you can't fully replace in the ER setting, for example. It's going to be very hard to displace things that can be done from the human perspective, especially when multiple traumas come through. Not to say AI cannot help clinicians in the ER, but when you have a multiple vehicle collision and so on and so forth that requires multiple personnel involved, I'm not so sure we're there in terms of the technology for robotics to actually catch up. So it's not as I don't think it's going to be as easy as people assume it's going to be. I think what could happen is that as clinicians, we need to have the skills to understand prompt engineering. I need to be able to check in with a database to ask them the right questions to get the right recommendations, the new updates, and so on and so forth. So I think it is important for the next generation of physicians, NPs, PAs, health professionals to learn AI skills, whether it's prompt engineering, asking the right questions, and it's key for them to understand and not be afraid of the technology. But I think it's an augmentation of the person who's giving the healthcare. I kind of like to use the tricorder example. I mean, I'm sorry, I watch Star Trek, so please. And what happens is that you're able to ask these questions of any data source appropriately, and of course, double check and make sure that the data source is correct. It's I just feel that the contrarian view is important because we can be disruptive, but we need to be disruptive as carefully and contrarianly. And as disruptive, we need to be carefully contrarian. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think that's why if people understand what they're trying to disrupt, you can bring the contrarian view in and say, okay, I think I can do these things better. And then to example, I illustrated to Ethan about the procurement space, right? The current viewpoint is 6 to 12 months. That's the best way to do it. No, from a contrarian perspective, we can use AI to accelerate the process. So those are things that I'm looking at and how I think about things. I'm not saying that we can't disrupt healthcare. We can, but we got to disrupt it as carefully as possible. And again, in a collaborative fashion. I used to be part of a group called Docs and Hackers quite a long time ago. It was a great group where physicians and engineers got together and worked on projects together. Technical co-founders were looking at clinician co-founders and vice versa. So I'm hoping we'll get back there again. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I actually enjoyed going to that group. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Arnold. I have a quick
Hi,
question
Shimari.
for you. So,
Meet you.
we've talked a lot about how generative AI is actually helping making operations easier in a
Mhm.
hospital setting or even in the pharmaceutical industry. But as you mentioned, there aren't any established guidelines or
Yeah.
key performance indicators to verify how these methods could help actually benefit drug development or
Mhm.
prognosis, diagnosis, and treatment in a real hospital setting.
Yeah.
How far do you think we are from actually having these simulating virtual digital twin sort of frameworks and using that in a real world setting?
Yeah, great question, Shivari. Thank you very much for asking that. I think there are companies out there that are looking to pursue this, and I don't want to say that we're 5, 10 years away. I mean, we might be closer to that. The only issue with that is, how well a digital twin will actually stand up to what is real world stuff. I mean, digital twins are great in terms of like replicating what a person could be, but does it take in a lot of the social factors and stuff like that? They may affect us in real life and so on and so forth. That is kind of making me a little bit, I think, a little more cautious about saying that we are going to be here in 2 years. I would say, if anything at all, maybe 5, maybe 6 years, maybe. Again, I'm just putting a random number on it, so please take it for what it's worth. And to answer it deeper, more, what do you call this, more at a higher level, there are companies like, I don't know, Shabar, have you heard of Unlearn AI?
Oh, yes,
Yes, so Unlearn
I've
is doing
also
that.
heard of
Yeah,
a
good.
couple more companies.
Yes,
There's this upcoming firm called Symbiosis that
yes,
actually
exactly.
builds these spatiotemporal models for predictive purposes.
Mhm.
But I don't see a lot of use cases where these products are actually being used in a real world setting yet.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a gap.
There is definitely a gap. I think a lot of it's kind of a mindset thing. Once you've done things a certain way for a long time, that's kind of proven to work, so to speak. The adoption of that is going to be, a little bit harder. And I think as well as that people aren't really used to the idea of a digital twin. And there's a lot of skepticism around it based on my colleagues and the people I've spoken to. I'm part of like different groups that we interact with, and there's always a healthy debate between clinicians, and some of where physicians and investors at the same time. Some feel that it will definitely revolutionize things, and some feel that it won't be as adopted as quickly. So those are the difficulties that we see. It's a lot of like stakeholder buy-in and people willing to actually take that risk and do that. And to your point, in terms of digital twins and stuff like that, drug development, it's got to come from whether pharma wants to buy it, research institutions want to buy into it, and it could accelerate this current issue with funding being cut and stuff like that. May force people to actually have to find more unique ways to actually conduct clinical trials and so on and so forth. So it may push the digital to an acceleration a little faster. It's a possibility, but you still need a lot of money for that. So at least to prove that a lot of these things work. I've spoken to a company out of Europe a long time ago that was looking to work with a US-based healthcare system that was doing digital twins for hospital operations. So that's a little bit different from the drug development side. And I had a lot of questions for them about hospital operations because within the feature set for training of the stuff, they didn't factor in a lot of things that happen in a hospital on a daily basis. So power outages, strikes, and so on and so forth. So those things were not factored into, like, you can't really, I don't know how you document stuff like that as a feature where, that affected how logistics were planned and so on and so forth. So it's interesting. I am keeping my eye out in the space and constantly looking at it, but I think it's a ways off. So I hope that answers your question, Shivari. I try not to put numbers on stuff because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you for the answer. It
Yeah.
definitely gave me some things to think about.
Sure. Yeah. Lexi, let's see. Okay.
Yes, hi.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Lexi.
I supposed to make the presentation, but I thought that it
Sure.
will not be any chance, so I wrote the mail to the chat. Yeah. So actually, I'll just repeat to everyone that my name is Alexi. I'm actually an engineer in the sphere of energy and energy efficiency, energy technologies. But my wife, she's a doctor, and we are working as a couplepreneurs. We're developing together a new generation of the healing center, where I will apply my technologies, my you know unique technologies that are based on the contrast procedures for physical rejuvenation. While my wife, she's a practicing psychologist and hypnotherapist, so she's ex Doctors Without Borders, and she was work in the United Nations. Um, and she's practicing psychology and hypnotherapy, and also teaching in the institute. She's the member of the psychotherapist national guild in the United States, and she developed a very unique practices for the mental health, emotional conditions, and all this kind of impactful neuro-based approaches, which is actually like an art to restart the person who is feeling stressful or anxiety, or not feeling kind of kind of affirmed to take any decisions for improving their life. So we are developing this project, and it will be easy scalable as we are making the business model. That would be a couple of secrets rooms there. And that would be something like a game changing that definitely people would like to try and would like to experience. And we do have the business plan under development right now, but almost completed, and looking for partners, for investors who would like to join to be a part of this endeavor. So if somebody is liking to explore this, you're more than welcome. We can share the pitch decks and the idea with you guys. So actually, that's if we can talk here about the business models, that is fine. I do have some numbers in mind. Yeah. So
sure, we can start like I can walk people through how I assess certain things and stuff like that from the venture kind of space. I think that would be very helpful. So first of all, Alexei, congratulations to you and your wife for actually wanting to foray into this space. And it's great that you have an expert on board like yourself. And this is a classic example of an engineer and a physician working together on something that is within the core expertise. Couple of questions is like the mental health space is actually very crowded right now in many ways in terms of a lot of solutions that are out there. And I think, again, I don't know the technology. I just have heard your presentation. The question is like, how are you going to really truly differentiate your product from what is going to be somebody out there that's either D2C or it's not D2C, or the myriad of mental health solutions? And how do you set yourselves apart? And those are the questions I would like to ask about how are you going to, like, I'd say, be ahead of the competition and show that you have better engagement and so on and so forth. And I think we all know here mental health in the United States, unfortunately, is not the easiest to access. The question I have now is like, what is your business model going to be like? How is it going to be? Is there going to be potentially reimbursement based? Is it going to be, we're going to take cash up front? Are you going to work with FSAs, HSAs to allow your solution for people can get that reimbursement? So those are things that at a high level, when I hear a solution coming in like this, first of all, compliments on the fact that there are two experts working there. But how do you separate yourselves from? This is a terrible analogy, so please forgive me. So I like to use the solution. The way I look at things now is like I look at the cheeseburger, right? Every cheeseburger will have a different wrapper. How do you show that again, no insult intended, so please forgive me. How do you prove that what you're delivering to the public for your solution is going to be better than every other solution, and so on and so forth? So those are questions I would like to bring up and so on at the very high level.
That is the perfect question. Thank you so much, Arnold,
Sure.
for raising it up. And as I mentioned, we are working on our pitch decks, on our presentation. That would be a video presentation, because it will be like mostly visualizing what we are planning to do. And for those who are considering it for investment and aware about the other opportunities, of course, it will be immediately shown how we are distinguish ourselves, comparing to any other existing solutions. So we plan that it will be something like a game changing, truly game changing. But of course, we pretty well understand that over the period of time we can be copied by somebody, or somebody can do something better than us, you know. So it's just a normal business consequences. So that's why we are not just planning to do it and stop you know, improving ourselves. So we do have some strategies how to improve these practices in the future, how to involve a kind of a new solutions to that. But what we are thinking about, that it's best to I wouldn't say the word flood the market, because it requires a lot of the investments, but at least to open a few centers in the most you know, popular areas, you know, on the selected areas. We are now focusing California, but of course, such big cities like New York, Chicago will be, you know, among our targeted markets as well. And we also think that this idea will be spreaded across the other countries in the world. We're targeting Southeast Asia, for example, Japan, because uh, the overall solution will be enhanced by the AI technologies that our friends here and partners are helping us to develop. Uh, and that would be something like that fits the 21st century expectations. So I believe that a lot of the customers will be first impressed by the approach. So we just want to do this.
So a quick question for you. So just sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. My apologies. There's something I forgot to ask a little early on. Is like, in terms of how you're approaching your solution, has there been enough market research and demand for your approach? Have you done the baseline, at least talking to kind of like the people that are working in this space, or at least patients and so on? So based on your wife's experience, is there a
Yes.
hunger and a need for your approach? And then was that a large enough, at least some people do fairly large, some people don't. So the question is like, did you at least have that basic diligence to say our approach is going to really be revolutionary? That's question number one. Question number two, I appreciate that you're targeting larger cities, but with the things that are going on currently in terms of number countrywide and stuff like that, would you ever consider going to the rural areas first versus the larger cities? Very simply because there's going to be a huge need in those areas once there's a reduction in funding and resources. And the third thing is, are you definitely sure that your solution is going to be replicable in different countries and around the world? Because as we all know, cultures vary differently, even within the United States. I mean, I can go to Oregon, I can order a coffee one way, and I could come back to California to offer coffee and order coffee another way. So how confident do you feel that everything that you are developing will be translatable to different cultures? So Japan is very technologically forward, but the friends I have who come from Japan are a little more reserved. So those are questions that I want you to think about. And again, I'm just curious about how are you going to solve those approaches?
I'm so thankful to you, Arnold. You
Mhm.
are raising that important questions that I'm really happy that I met you today and have this opportunity to chat with you and get your mentorship, you know, on this project. Of course, we conducted the market research. We
Sure.
know our focus groups.
Okay.
So we are targeting these focus groups, and the decision why these groups why we select the big cities instead of the rural areas was just because of the majority of the representative of these focus groups that are living in the big city.
Okay.
That's why we're targeting mostly them. Of course, there are
Okay.
some in the rural areas, but this is not representing the major market for us. In terms of the cultural
Okay.
differences, of course, it was first of all taken care about, and that's why Japan, South Korea was selected as the highly technological market who experience that same kind of problems, but already get used to solve them or look at that in the more positive way when it's highly technological and you're 100% sure. That's why once we have this technology, we are open for this market and we can compete on this market. But at the same time, of course, the approaches between the cultural stuff, we have some collaborations in with the locals therapists there. They of course know the better what is the cultural approaches, and they will transfer our scripts and our programs to the local market. Of course, they will adapt it to the to the market in Japan and in South Korea. And we are focusing on the American market and Eastern European market. We are actually originally from Ukraine, and you know, we pretty well understand the mentality there.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a bit community in the United States of people from the Eastern Europe. So they will be among of one of our target group. Not all, but it's just a target group, one of the target group for us.
So there's one more thing I wanted to add here, and this is, I think, maybe hopefully a good segue into this. So I like how you're kind of thinking about things, how you're trying to solve things in terms of how you're trying to approach markets and stuff like that. But this is also a little concern personally, from my perspective as working in the investment field, is the messaging is really, really important. And marketing of how you're going to, what your solution is going to do is going to be key. And this is just a personal view and just only my opinion. And my opinion only is that there's been, when you work with fellow investors, sometimes they feel that don't spend money on a marketing budget. But the problem is, like, a lot of CEOs or founders are not technically good marketers. They're not there to market the product. They can talk about the technology and the solution, but they don't have anybody to help them market what they're doing, spread the message, and create the campaigns to get the engagement. So to your point, I think, Alexei, and what you're both, you and your wife are doing is fantastic, but there needs to be, I think, a better messaging. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying that I think there's ways for all of us to improve as founders and investors to understand how the messaging is key. It's how you message what you're trying to do and get people engaged. And then as you grow, then you get the salespeople and you market it. The salespeople come in and then they sell your product and so on and so forth. So it's kind of how I'm looking at this. This is just a personal view. So any entrepreneur here, I would highly recommend engaging even a small marketing consultant, just to at least figure out what your messaging is going to be. You don't have to do it like long term, but at least carve out a little bit of money in the budget from the investment to figure out how you're telling people stuff, because it can make the difference between where you are and where you're not in 6 months. Part of the reasons I know, I recently have a friend of mine who's a founder who's moved to the Bay Area, and he hates marketing. He just wants to go build this stuff. So it's like, how do you get the message out there? It's like, well, if I go do marketing and raising money, I can't go build. So in some ways, you're allowing someone else to take the burden off your back, right? Everybody here has incredible intellectual capacity. We want to focus on building the technology and the vision, and letting someone else to help with crafting this. Again, you don't have to engage people like hire a chief marketing officer. There are fractional people out there that can help significantly. I think that messaging sometimes is part of the problem. And to your point, like, we talked about scribes and KPIs and stuff like that. They're marketing it a certain way, but sometimes I think the messaging could be better. But then again, that's my own humble opinion. So that's what I'm trying to bring up. So it's important to, like, get your point across that's why, Alexi, I think while your focus groups focus on cities, it will be, you potentially could benefit from a great marketing message going to rural areas and stuff like that. Again, just from what I'm hearing off the top of my head, this is just my feedback.
Thank you so much, Arnold.
Yeah.
It's really valuable. And even I want to ask you, if you are recording this this meeting, and it will be available for because I even didn't expect that you will give me such a perfect heads up, to improve our strategy and reconsider our marketing approach. If there's some recording, so is there some recording available?
I don't know that. Is there any recording?
Yes, we're recording it.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be shared. I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And definitely, once I'm ready, I would like to meet you again, if possible.
Sure.
And
I mean, I'm in the Bay Area. Feel free to reach out to me on
yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah, and to present you the final version of our approach and our strategy.
And I think the one thing I also want to delve into and segue into here for everybody is, I think the most important question is, how do you get paid? If you're going to build something, how are you going to get the revenue going? And I think the yardsticks have moved, that a lot more investors, at least I'm seeing, even at the seed stage or earlier pre-seed, they're asking for more financial returns. So a friend of mine is a founder right now, and he's been in it for 2 years. He's built not an MVP, but a working app where he's actually taking care of patients on it successfully. And he's looking to raise money. And he was told by a seed stage investor that I need to see more revenue coming in. And it has to be like, I don't know, like 3 zeros and maybe like 5 digits, 6 digits per month. And it's kind of like, okay, that's interesting. But again, we have seen a lot of valuations change, funding rounds change over the years. So having an idea of how you're going to get paid and keep the
Yeah,
lights on is going to be extremely important. And I think that's the
yeah.
one thing that
Mhm.
why digital health had some issues a long time ago, because everybody used the baseball stadium approach. If we build it, people will pay for it or will come to the stadium. But healthcare is not that way, not necessarily that way, because everybody says, I pay for insurance, I want insurance to cover this and stuff like that. There's that misalignment that we see in healthcare that can be very problematic. So anyways, that's just kind of where I've seen stuff.
We are actually have this strategy to make it to make the price affordable to the customers, but to make it on a regular basis. So just split the sessions for the smaller period of time for the less money. It's still very efficient, but it doesn't you know um, force the person to pay for
Right.
that kind of big amount of money. That's the first thing. The second thing, that we are planning to have the packages. Of course, it will be kind of similar like we are doing in the like we see it in the gym, right? So if you have the package, you have some membership and all these kind of things. You have some incentives and some bonuses for that. And our estimates for the monthly revenue, the pessimistic way, the worst case scenario, is about 70 to 80 grants, but the optimistic is about 100, 120. So it depends. Yeah.
So Brent, I think I had a Brent had a question. Sorry.
Oh, I have an unrelated question.
Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
Brent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Lee. So my unrelated question and some background to actually work in government healthcare. I will throw out the question I'm asking is a representation of myself and not the government entity. But as medicine and healthcare become more and more hyper-personalized, and I'm doing a doctor of public health at Johns Hopkins, so I kind of see the spectrum working on both sides. What, and given the changing public health landscape nowadays, should both sides be taking from each other, and which sides, or what should both sides be kind of leaving behind as it relates to not just healthcare innovation, but kind of health innovation between this hyper-personalized versus this public health kind of crosswalk there?
Yeah, actually, Brent's a great question. That can actually tie together Alexi's solution and your question. Hopefully, I'm going to answer that as best as I can. I'm not a futurist. I'm only guessing from what I've seen and so on and so forth. Is that hyper personalization is going to take quite a degree of cost to kind of build those models that are really going to be able to like. That's why everybody's saying agentic's the way to go, and I don't necessarily know if agentic's the way to go, because everything in an AI system requires training and monitoring and so on and so forth, ensuring that things work really well. So I think public health could benefit from working with founders like Alexi to determine what could really impact pop. That's why I segued into going into rural areas, because they're going to hurt pretty badly, right? And that's kind of where I think there could be solutions, like it will take the states themselves to kind of hopefully fund some of those efforts, which means that it may not be as personalized as we'd like it to be, but it's better than having no solution at all. That's kind of where it is. And the one thing we may have to leave behind is that, okay, we may not be able to help everybody. I don't like that as a physician by training, but sometimes we may not have a choice. That's kind of where I'm going with that. And this is why I encourage founders. In fact, it was really funny. In 2018, I was at a mental health care conference in the UCSF. It was a hackathon, I think. And the guy at a private insurance company said, never discount the fact that Medi-Cal wants to work with founders. They're willing to be very, very, very innovative. And I was at the Capitol a couple of years ago. A friend invited me up there and said, come talk to Medi-Cal. And they talk about what they pay for. So I think there's ways to do that. The question is, like, how do you leverage state Medicaid and county programs to actually kind of like work with solutions? And that's where, Alexia, I'm going to tie in really quickly into what you're saying. So for people with private insurance, if you can make your solution not just necessarily pay out of pocket, but leverage FSA, HSA solutions, that might be extremely helpful, because that means that people will now have the ability to use their insurance, even though we all know that FSA, HSAs are still your own money. So it's not really technically your insurance, but it allows that ability for solutions to get paid, and people don't feel hurt as much because you're kind of prepaying up front. But I think that's why I think this is a time where public health solutions like Brent and the PhD are going for needs to engage with founders here in this group to figure out how we move forward. And this is kind of like, even to your point about questions and stuff like that, working with solutions that with people like Brent in these programs is where you also might want to talk to as well. Say, how do we help public health? How do we find those solutions? Because you have the ability to build this stuff. The question now is, like, where are you going to solve? And that's why I think Brent will be a great person to connect with to talk about what you want, especially at Johns Hopkins. I did 2 rotations out there. I can tell you, it's like it was not the easiest getting up at 4 a.m. every day and going home at nearly midnight every day for a month. I did the surgical rotation out at the main campus there. That was a lot. It was fun. I learned a lot. Don't get me wrong. But you can see where powerful institutions can really be helpful working with, like, founders like yourself. And that's why, Alexia, I think that's where I think you can engage too. So,
Thank you so much, Arnold. It's really
hope that helps.
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
that's a really good advices. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lee.
Please call me Arnold. That's all. Yeah. Any questions, anybody else? I'm happy to answer. It's like, it's everybody's time here. It's not just mine. I'm happy to help whoever, anybody else has any other questions.
So I think I have one more question, and I'm
Sure.
personally still like figuring out how to ask it. But I think as we see, I went to a digital health conference yesterday here at Penn, and they were talking about how like the healthcare innovation in the US just like moves at such a rapid pace that while there's a lot of promise, especially from the startup sense, saying like, oh, from an economies of scale standpoint, we're eventually going to reduce costs, increase accessibility. But because things move so quickly, and like these types of hyper technological services are like, I mean, products are like replacing services. Is this like an issue from like a healthcare standpoint or infrastructure standpoint, or maybe even policy that like maybe we'll never actually realize these gains and costs because things are just going to keep going, like, match this pace of innovation and then keep that price up?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think there's, to your point, I'm going to try and answer this as best I can. There's always a misalignment in terms of incentives, really. What you're doing is that you're approaching legacy systems who are extremely cautious about what you can let go in terms of information. How do you want to affect infrastructure? The CTOs can be pretty much the person that determines certain things. For example, if there were some scribe solutions I tested that required me to download an extension onto Chrome to use it, so the question is, like, is that going to cause disruption to what I've built? And as we all know, your CTOs tend to be very, very careful about the things they've built out, and they want to see more stuff happen. before you can ensure that you're not going to crash the entire system. In the healthcare system, if you crash something, it's on your head. So what I'm trying to say is that I've been part of system crashes where an EHR would go down and I can't see anybody and I had to write things on a piece of paper and then so on and so forth. But sometimes the innovation needs to kind of meet the industry. And I think with innovation moving really quickly, it doesn't always align with what healthcare systems expect. And I think the people at a certain large institution in California get pitched nearly 200 solutions a day, and they're like, nope, thank you very much, and so on and so forth. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years, where everybody is saying that we can use AI to accelerate a lot of things, and the doctor is going to get replaced and stuff like that. I just feel like there's still a lot of misaligned incentives from the technology as well as the healthcare side, that people aren't really talking to each other. They're talking around each other, above each other, under each other, and that's what I'm seeing. Hope that helps.
Thank you for that, Arnold. I just have one last question. Since you have worked in the investment space, I was wondering if you yourself found a company worth investing into, do you then go to other VC groups or investors to ask them to syndicate with you, or what is it that you do behind the scene?
Yeah, so I mean, it's like what I've done is like I worked with the teams that I advise to do investments as part of a fund, and one I've actually personally invested in myself. And I helped the founder. I said, if you're interested in I reached out to my network to say, if you're interested in this, working with this person, this medtech device, I mean, you do have to sell. You do have to prove to your fellow VCs that or investors that this company is really, really going to be something very different. And it just happened recently for a company I personally invested in. I was able to get him a $300,000 round from another seed fund, and now their valuations climbed up significantly. They're going for their Series A, and it's also the founder. The founder executed. The founder built what they built within like 3-4 years. Got reimbursement, got FDA approval, and proved that there was adoption. So they were growing so quickly, they were actually able to buy a small little company of their own to accelerate their progress. So it's kind of like that. When I assessed that company, it was a blend of clinical/investment perspectives that allowed me to make that hopefully correct investment. So what I'm essentially trying to say is that you do have to sell, and it's I try to get other VCs, especially when the founders ask me for help. If I'm doing a round with the larger fund, because the fund does not lead, we will try and syndicate it with other founders that we may know, but other investors who might be interested, and so on and so forth. So we can syndicate it with the fund. For the small investment that I made, the other personal investment as an angel, I'm kind of doing the most of the grunt work myself.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Happy to chat online with anybody, just let me know. Any other questions? Again, this is everybody's time. Just feel free to ask me what you can. Sorry, whatever you want. So. Ethan, you look like you're thinking about something again. Sorry to pick on you all the time.
I always have a bunch of questions, and I
Sure.
mean, as a grad student, so I'm a master's of public health here at Penn, and I think even before this master's program, I was very much in the entrepreneurial space, and
Yeah.
hopefully want to do it again sometime in the future. But
Sure.
ever since I come to Penn, very like finance heavy school, things like
Mhm.
VC and like private equity, those sort of things have been really also kind of put on my
Mhm.
plate here. So I think kind of more just like an early career question. For a person who comes from a more like healthcare background,
Mhm.
like how would a person at an early level like kind of really, I guess, break into this industry of maybe like early stage investing and or maybe growth equity for
Yeah, so
healthcare
I mean,
specifically?
no, it's interesting you're bringing that up. I mean, you gotta look for the right funds that are willing to bring people on board. I think some of the larger funds out here are getting focused in health, and I kind of, to be honest with everybody, I would say I kind of lucked out. I mean, I was joking with a buddy of mine. I said, like, I told him that Google will buy a certain company in 6 months. He looked at me and said, "You must be joking, right?" And then Google did. And then he said to me, "Do you want to work with me and advise the fund?" But you being an entrepreneur, you consider being an EIR. That's one thing, because that may be an interesting way for you to get into a fund. It might be easier in terms of applying for an investment analyst role. You could do that too. And then I think there are lots of funds out there that I've seen, especially looking for. If you're a student right now, you may even want to consider going and say, "I'll do a summer internship as an investment analyst," and that gets you in front of these guys. And then they say, "Okay, you know what, Ethan, we like what you think, how you're thinking. We like the entrepreneurial spirit. We like you have an MPH. Let's bring you on board as maybe an associate for, you know, the healthcare stuff that we're doing." But I think it's very important for all of us here, if we're in healthcare, or at least coming from, to always try to find a way to be involved with the investing side, because um, it's key to ensure that the solutions that funds are investing in are actually going to impact most of the people that we can try and help. So that's why what I was saying to Brent and Alexi is that things are going to get left behind, but you want to catch the majority of things that can be helped. And that's why I think having your MPH and your focus as an entrepreneur is going to be extremely helpful. But you got to start kind of like looking for those roles now. If I were you, that's kind of what I recommend. And if you're going to be in healthcare AI space, if you're interested in that, I don't know how much Pennsylvania is focused on that, or Philadelphia, but San Francisco is where a lot of stuff is being done in general. So that's kind of like where it comes from. And Berkeley too. The Haas School is fantastic. You know, you got a lot of like intellectual capital at Stanford. Coming to these conferences is where you want to network too at the same time. Stanford, stuff like that. So if you got some time, I would encourage you to do that. Yeah. Okay. I think we're almost at an end. So I was glad to meet everybody today. Happy, hopefully I answered your questions. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to. Vanlon, thank you very much for putting this together.
Thank you so much, Arnold. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a good rest of your day.
All right, take care. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you so
See you.
much, Vivian.